blockchain, Hyperion, I believe it's called, their goal is to utilize a Google map, like a mapping program. And you can click on a business on Google Maps. Well, when you click on that business, it brings up an option to do a transaction right there via their blockchain, right? So, like David said, how are these people going to, connect? Well, if they have a Boost mobile phone or something like that, if they have this app theoretically, and they are, making wonderful baskets in some third world country, well, there is an argument to be made with the expansion of logistics and Amazon that if they want to sell that product, they can do so through a digital blockchain currency that unites us via mapping. So I do.
Welcome to the Blockchain Wealthcast podcast, a show about finance, accounting, and blockchain technology. In this ever-evolving marketplace, we help accountants, financial advisors, and everyday people better understand the world of blockchain and crypto. A podcast that talks about the transformative power of technology, so you don't fear it, but instead embrace it. And here are your hosts, Rory Henry and Dan Casey of Arrowroot Family Office, and David Spencer, CPA of DKS Tax and Consulting.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Blockchain Wealthcast with Dan Casey of Arrowroot Family Office and David Spencer of DKS Tax and Consulting. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Rory. Nice to see you, David.
I'm jealous. Dan's out on the porch today, so I'm jealous about that.
Yeah, it's Friday at 3:00, so you can find me on my porch, working away. I promise you that.
Working away.
But the fresh air is a nice reprieve from that office lighting,
Real thing. It's a real thing.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, let's start out, gentlemen. Dan, why don't you start by giving us kind of a market update to begin with, and then we'll springboard from there.
Sure. I mean, market update currently. Normally, a market update on a crypto podcast should be focal pointed around, cryptocurrency, right? And
what's blockchain at? Where's
Bitcoin moving? But in this current space in this year, I don't want to say a unicorn, but a bit unique. We are looking at the total market, right? Across asset correction, volatility, all that is happening. So what we're looking at right now, based on July PCE data, right? It's a strong support that, hey, this Federal Reserve might pull off this soft landing, right? They might actually do it. They might stick this soft landing. They pulled the chute seemingly just in time. Yields positive across the board. We're everybody's anticipating this Fed pivot. But the market is wrong. I think there is a sentiment that the market may be wrong in its anticipation of a rate cut next year. So the Fed still has some work to do to get people on board, so people feel like they have two hands on the wheel, and this thing isn't going to run out of gas. Yeah. Now, with that being said, that in the next 3 to 6 months, we're most likely going to be looking at more of this cross-asset volatility, which includes cryptocurrencies, right? That's a big piece. It's going to include pretty much everything, right? And so you got to be very nimble. If you're a trader of cryptocurrencies, you need to be very, very sure about the moves you're going to make. But I think what we'll see, as things progress, when that August CPI data comes in, that'll give us confirmation on whether July's breakdown and core inflation momentum is for real. And then we'll be able to kind of go from there. So September 13th, folks, put it on your calendar, pay attention to what's going on that day. That's going to be an important one.
Yeah. I mean, someone's speaker on there. Hello, testing, 1, 2.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah. Fed Chairman Powell just came out today in Jackson Hole, and it was interesting. He said, we're going to look at the data, but, he sees another, rate hike, and then he doesn't see the Fed easing up on that in next year. So it seems like it was almost a reset of expectations from what was said in July.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so. It's setting expectations. I don't know if it's a total reset or more of a, hey, this is going to take a lot longer than maybe we initially anticipated. So,
and I think I blinked and we went down another few hundred points, but we're down on the Dow today, 1,400 points right now. I think it was 800 just a minute ago.
And it's August 26th right now.
Yeah. And so I do feel like the market is not taking the signal really, right? Or is this what we're seeing today? Because for the last few days, I don't feel like it's taking the signal of rate hikes are still coming.
So that's where that Fed pivot was baking in, right? So that Fed pivot, they're like, oh, they'll pivot. They'll bring them down. Oh, they'll bring them down. And then you had those runs, and then all of a sudden, 2.5% plus chop in 1 day's time, 3% in the NASDAQ plus, that's when people went, oh, they're serious. Oh, they're going to hold on to this for a while. We could be riding this. And it's funny, David, I don't know how you think about this or how you shape your, analysis of everything that you do, but I read quite a bit and about this stuff, and in the 80s, people were getting 18% on a bond, so like, I don't know the factors at play that are going to influence, the sky is falling. I don't think that, but I think, this is going to be a rough and tumble volatility. He said this is going to affect households, this is going to affect middle class, lower class people a lot harder than it is, people with net worths over $1 billion.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, it's hard for anything to kind of touch you when you're that big of a whale, but I do think that we're in for a sea change in really the way that we operate and do business. When I think about how to really structure a portfolio, what I think about is what's going on in the whole wide world. If we're looking at a global portfolio and we're thinking about emerging markets, we're thinking about trying to be early into markets that may be growing, we've got to look at the whole world. And the world's in a great deal of turmoil from a number of different factors, right? I mean, if the third person in line for the presidency can't travel freely around the world, then that tells us something, right? People of much less importance, their safety has sparked world wars before, right? I mean, it's not an exaggeration, right? I feel like if I would have said that exact same thing like a year ago, people would be like, David, you're crazy. But I mean, it's on CNN now, right?
Yeah.
And so
Franz Ferdinand was real.
There he is. He knows his history. That man reads. And
the Black Hand, yeah.
And if China and Taiwan and these issues begin to really, cause a problem, where are the opportunities there, and what do we need to prepare for in the meantime? If we look at Davos is always ahead. They're talking about blockchain. How is that going to be a part of the global system? IBM, they're talking about global logistics, right? And so I think we're going to find one way or the other, it's either going to glow. I think in that article I talk about, there may be a bifurcation of economies, right? There may be a bifurcation of people who have access to the digital world that's going to grow, and people who don't.
Yeah, talk about that, David, because David just wrote an article we can post in the show notes, and you talk about people who have internet access, who can be on the blockchain. As we roll out more AML and KYC, anti-money laundering, and know your customer, and we start having a digital identity, it's going to be those who have those internet connections and can have a digital identity and take part in that global marketplace. That'll be the haves. And then you'll have the have-nots who don't necessarily have access to that blockchain. Let's talk about that, David.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sticky subject, right? Because there's a whole swath of the 7 billion people who are on the earth, right? There's 7 billion people on the earth. A lot of them don't have reliable internet access to do their daily transactions with. So if the majority of global transactions go to a blockchain or internet-based system, that's going to leave a lot of people in the dust. And how does that change the way the system needs to operate? Because at the end of the day, if I'm in Chile and I'm making beef, somebody needs to eat that beef. right? And that might be just somebody who's a regular person working every day. And what does that look like? So we're definitely entering a whole new world, right? And this is not the first time this has occurred, right? After World War II, we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, right?
Mhm.
And that was a reset button on the world. So it kind of gets a negative connotation, but things change. The world we live in today is not the world of 1945. I think that's not an exaggeration. It's not a wild thing to say.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Right? Oh my gosh, that's controversial. No, right? Maybe it's time we reset the rules of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we discussed this prior to the call, and I'll also put this in the show notes. Ray Dalio has a great book called The Changing World Order. He has a wonderful YouTube video that is animated that talks about the changing world orders and the rise and fall of different world orders, from the Dutch to the French to the British to the US. And now with China's ascension with the UN and our US dissension, we're looking at these wars. External conflicts usually happen, and then the world order changes. So, with Ukraine and China, what's going on in Taiwan, it seems like there is a shift in what's going on in regards to the monetary system, the global system, and the changing world order.
This seems to be the shakeup that Bitcoin, is almost, I don't want to say causing, but
has foretold, right?
Has foretold. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a great way to put it. Now, I just wanted to jump back real quick. David mentioned, this bifurcation of, basically economy and access to economies.
Right.
And we know that currently, we have first world countries, we have second world countries, and we have third world countries, right? And third world countries typically don't have the same access to resources and, maybe digital connection that we do. But we've started to see that, change and shift, right? You think of, I used to have a Boost mobile phone in high school, right? I'd pay for minutes and have a little, it was like a Nextel phone. I could beep, beep my friends and stuff like that. That was life growing up in Jamaica Plain. But it's one of the interesting pieces is that is now accessible to people in more remote areas and less connected countries. So with that, the problem seems to be expressing itself of, okay, well, if those people are connected digitally through a phone, through the internet, whatever it might be, and with satellites, we could probably accomplish quite a bit. And then, there's commerce to be had there, right? How do we make that connection? Well, I think that, the blockchain provides a lot of solutions for that connection piece, because, instead of giving the money to, what was the old email scam, the Nigerian prince, where you've inherited $5 million, all that sort of stuff. Instead of the skepticism that you have to carry with that, right, there's verifiable, transactions here on a blockchain. Now, I was reading a data point from, and this is not investment advice, just something I found interesting. And so bear with me, I'm going to go through two things. So I was reading, scientists who does population projection. And basically there's some expansion and retraction is a natural occurrence in nature. And the estimates now, and this is very recent, within the last 2 years, I believe, but the estimations are, it's no longer that our planet can't sustain the overpopulation. Rather, the other issue is starting to rear its head, that we may be underpopulated at one point. So what they say is basically this Earth will cap us at about 12 billion people. Right. And if we try to go beyond that, there'll be retractions and corrections. And as we know from the market, corrections, all that good on the way up, it's just as bad on the way down. So that's something to think about when you think about the natural disasters we've experienced. So if it's 12 billion people that it caps out at, how do we connect 12 billion people via commerce? Right. Well, an interesting project that's going on, and I don't know where it is in development. I believe it's in Southeast Asia. And what I think Singapore is where they're headquartered. And essentially they're utilizing a blockchain and facilitating it to map 12 billion people in the world, right? And not just people, but businesses. Like that's kind of the idea. We already know, we're going to have digital IDs. So let's get past that and think of it from a commerce standpoint. Well, probably the most unifying thing in the world is Google Maps. I mean, if we are to think about it that way, it shows you everything that's going on everywhere that's populated. Well, this blockchain, Hyperion, I believe it's called, their goal is to utilize a Google map, like a mapping program. And you can click on a business on Google Maps. Well, when you click on that business, it brings up an option to do a transaction right there via their blockchain, right? So, like David said, how are these people going to, connect? Well, if they have a Boost mobile phone or something like that, if they have this app theoretically, and they are, making wonderful baskets in some third world country, well, there is an argument to be made with the expansion of logistics and Amazon that if they want to sell that product, they can do so through a digital blockchain currency that unites us via mapping. So I do fear that the adoption of that, there will be a gap where there will be pain points, as there are in most shakeups and transitions in society, which is what Dalio gets to. But I do feel that human beings are very resilient, as we can see.
Absolutely.
Right? That we've gotten through. You said we reset like less than 100 years ago. We're like, all right, we'll try. Let's try this again. Let's shuffle the cards, deal again. So I do believe that we'll be able to overcome, whatever those pain points might be. But it is, interesting and intriguing when you're able to shape a problem, and then, I don't know, it's kind of relieving for me to be like, oh, the blockchain will help us. You can fall back. It's like the safety net, like, oh, at least we could do something with the blockchain and know that it's verifiable, right? Because if it wasn't verifiable, then the Nigerian prince email selling $5 million, the scams, everything like that would continue
all over
to
again,
happen
right?
in perpetuity. And it would do exactly what David articulated, bifurcate, be like, well, there's no trust with these places. So therefore, even if there's sweet, truthful people in those places, just the reputation and the way human nature is, that wouldn't work. But it kind of pulls the veil down and goes, well, actually, this is real because it's verified on the blockchain.
Yeah. And there's two things I'm going to talk about real quick, because we could nerd out on this.
Yeah, sorry, I got so nerdy there.
How are we going to connect 12 billion, 8 billion people to the blockchain, right?
Sure.
There's one solution that's really kind of low tech, and it's radio waves, right?
Yep.
So you can use radio waves to connect to a blockchain via offline transactions. They call those air-gapped devices. And so there's a number of different kinds of ways that they're doing that right now. We're still going to find out which one is going to win out, right? So that's a really kind of interesting thing to me, because we think about the blockchain, the internet, and we're so high tech, but then we're going back to radio. So that's kind of curious to me, right?
It's always like that post-apocalyptic world where they're just using radios, to communicate with each other.
Hey, keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
Right. The other one is on the total other end of the spectrum. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we do mining and those mining processes real quick, and kind of those challenges, and why this super high tech solution is really fun. So there's two main problems that people who want to mine or otherwise verify transactions on a blockchain run into. One, the computers get really hot, so you have to have an active cooling system. And the second is that they require a lot of electricity, right? So you have to have some type of reliable electricity source. So on our rock here, that's a pretty difficult thing to do, right? You got to have something that will do it, that will cool it actively, so it requires electricity. Then we have to have electricity to run the machines itself. Now we got this electricity suck. Like, wait a minute, where's the efficiency that we're getting here, right? But the super high-tech solution to that is there's one place in the whole universe that's different, that has different properties, right? And I'll give you a quick guess. Where in the universe might that be?
The moon?
Space.
The moon is in space, right? So in space, space is a heat sink, and a heat sink set up in space is going to be infinitely more effective, right? So if you put the machine in space, right, first of all, you've solved the heat problem. Second problem that you've solved is the solar problem, because the sun does not go down in space, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's one of the solutions that's really it's a satellite now, right?
Yeah.
It's a satellite with a huge computer on it, right? And that satellite mines or validates transactions on a blockchain. So the scale of the questions that people are asking and the solutions that they're coming up with is huge. I mean, and when you have a satellite, now you've effectively taken the hardware and given it ultimate security, right? The only people who are going to get in space are state actors and Elon Musk. So we don't got to worry about anybody else.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to space, man. I think I'm cool right where I am.
I'm good.
You're cool on your porch.
On the earth.
I don't think there's much out there for me.
Nothing for me, Jack.
There's no porch in space for you. Yeah. Great.
So,
well, gentlemen,
that's
why. I mean, that's crazy. That's fascinating, David. Anything else you want to touch on in your article? And I really, for our listeners, I really
we kind of got so far out that I'll just bring it back. Quick crypto recap. We are probably nearing something like a bottom. I think we're going to follow the stock market for the rest. But once we see it go, I've seen probably 3 or 4 projects that have completed their updates. Mm-hmm. We've got the Ethereum update coming to 2.0. I know the Pocket project is updated to its recent version. There's 2 or 3 others that have had a lot of updates. People have been working, right? So it's hard to see.
They've been working during this crypto winter.
Exactly. They've been in their development labs with all their screens just typing away and making it happen. And so a lot of those are kind of coming to fruition, right? They had ambitious goals for like a summer launch. They didn't really make it there. So now they're looking towards autumn and fall. And so I think we're going to have some technology that comes out that's going to make some things change. It's going to be great.
That'll be excellent.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Another great episode.
Always a pleasure. To the space and back, to the moon and back.
To the moon and back. It's gonna be Star Wars.
In 30 minutes. Look at us go.
Post-apocalyptic. We got Star Wars. Oh man, this is great. Good stuff, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Talk to you soon, fellas.
All opinions expressed by Rob Santos and Rory Henry on this website podcast interview are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arrowroot Family Office LLC or their parent company or affiliates, and may have been previously disseminated on television, radio, internet, or another medium. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinions. Past performance is not indicative of future results.